What's up guys, Todd Kelly, Shuswap Outdoors. Today we're going to be going over how to turn a raw hide into a nice, soft, flexible back skin. This one's a white-tailed deer. We also have another whitetail here. This is a really easy project you can do at home, is tanning a hide. It's not as hard as you think it is. Takes a couple basic tools and chemicals. There's a bunch of different companies that sell tanning kits for this purpose. The best one out there is True Bond Back Skin. It's True Bond 1000B. They sell kits to do a single back skin. Really satisfying doing it yourself. It's no different than getting into butchering and butchering your own animal at home. Kind of completes the whole process of hunting. And it's really nice if you're not mounting a deer to use more of the animal and to get a nice back skin like this that's super soft and flexible. The deer we have here was shot a few days ago. I salted it because the temperatures are warm. If it's cold out, I'm talking about 5 degrees Celsius down into freezing, you don't really have to worry about salting a hide. But in warmer weather, if it's going to be a few days, you want to get salt onto that hide to preserve it, pulls all the moisture out of it. If you're shooting an animal that's close to home and you already have the chemicals, you can take your raw skin without salting it and getting it into your pickle. Because this has salt on it, I need to wash it off. If your hide has a lot of blood or dirt on it, you'll also want to wash it off. I'm going to take it upstairs into a bathtub. You don't want to soak it for too long. Really dirty water, the bacteria is going to form, become alive again, and destroy your hide. It's called hair slippage, and the bacteria eats away at the roots of the hair follicles, and that causes your slippage. I'm sure you've heard that term around. In your rehydration bath, cleaning bath, whatever you want to call it, you want cold, clean water. You can add some salt if it's just a raw hide. If it's a salted hide, you don't need to add any more salt unless you've shaken the salt off. You just a couple handfuls of salt. Really dirty hides and bloody hides, you also want to add a bit of vinegar. Just plain white vinegar, couple liters into your cleaning bath is enough. That will just help prevent the bacteria from getting away at your hide. And we just want to clean the hide. This process is only going to take 10-15 minutes. If it's been salted for a long time and really dry, you're going to have to rehydrate the leather. So you're going to have to soak it for a little bit longer. Keep an eye on it. If your first bath is really dirty, really bloody, drain that water out. Get fresh, clean water in there again and let it soak, salt, vinegar, and the clean cold water until it's rehydrated. No more than an hour. After an hour, you're going to be really pushing your luck at bacteria getting away and starting to affect the hair on the hide. So like I said, I'm going to take this upstairs, clean it, get it nice and clean. That will also help your rehydration bath, or your pickle, I mean. Yeah, really dirty hides, bloody hides, you're going to have problems controlling your pH into your pickle bath. Salt, you're going to be using a lot of salt in the process. The best way, the cheapest way, is to get these big bags, or 50 pounds. You get them from a feed store. 50-pound bag here is $13, super cheap. You want a fine white salt with no iodine. Some of the feed bags will have iodine in them. You want plain white salt. It's a lot cheaper going this way than buying the little boxes from the grocery store. As I said, it's super cheap, and you're going to be going through a lot of salt in this process. So I'm going to come back. I'm just going to wash this off. It's not going to take long, and we'll come back and we'll get into the pickle, which is our second step in the process of tanning our hide. So our hide is washed now. As I said, if it's been salted for a few days, you're going to have to let it sit longer in your cleaning rehydration bath longer. Like I said, you just want to rinse it out a few times, get the blood and dirt out. That will really help you maintain the proper pH in your pickle. You won't be fighting it all the time. So here it is. I'll insert a picture of it in the rehydration bath. Nice clean. You want to get a lot of this water out before you put it into your pickle. For your pickle on a mule deer whitetail backskin, I like using 7 gallons of water for my pickle. That's about the right amount where your pickle is not going to get overwhelmed. You can do less, but once again, you'll be fighting your pH. So the bigger your pickle bath is, the easier time you're going to have maintaining the proper pH in it, and you're not going to have to worry about having hair slippage. For your pickle, most of the little tanning kits are going to come with citric acid powder, which works well. I like using safety pickle. You end up with the same result. You can use vinegar, but to get the proper pH, you'd have to use almost 90% vinegar. It's not worth the time or the hassle. You're really going to struggle with it. So you need something that's going to keep your pH right around 2. Once again, with the salt, we do 1 pound of salt for every gallon, so we're going to use 7 pounds of salt. We use a half fluid ounce per gallon of the safety pickle, and I don't use citric acid powder that much, so I'll put the correct amount up here in the video, somewhere around here, of what the proper ratio is. If you buy the little tanning kits that provide everything, the instructions will show you exactly how much you're going to need. pH strips help. You get these on Amazon, super cheap. And I said it earlier, you want around a 2 pH. You don't want it 1, that's too acidic, you're going to have problems. 3, 4, 5 is not enough to keep the bacteria away, and you're going to end up with hair slippage. So you want that 2 to 2.5 pH maintained the whole time in your pickle. So I'm going to weigh everything out. I got my bucket. I just like using a big tote for my tanning, and I'm getting that filled up right now, and we'll mix up the pickle and show you how that goes. So I got my tote here filled with 7 gallons of cold water. Some instructions will tell you use a lukewarm water at the beginning. I haven't found any difference. I'd rather use cold water out of the tap because I know bacteria is going to have a harder time in cold water compared to warm water. With the safety pickle, like I said, it's a half fluid ounce per gallon. So we're going to pour that out. And as I said earlier, with the citric acid, I'll put those instructions up above. You don't have to be super precise with your measurements. Close enough is good enough. I just use a little shot glass for my measurements. I've been doing this for about 12 years and haven't had any problems at all. And it doesn't matter if you put your acid in first or your salt in first. So our next step is to weigh out our salt. And as I said, we're looking for 1 pound of salt per gallon. So that's 3.5 pounds. Our next one's a little too much. That was 4 pounds. So we're at 3.5 again. And we'll add our salt. If you have sensitive skin, you probably want to wear gloves. I just mix my stuff and do everything with my bare hands. I don't have any problems, but if you have sensitive skin, the acid can really dry out your skin, so wear gloves if you want. I'm just going to mix the salt in until it's dissolved. Feel around, there's no clumps or that, all the salt's dissolved. I'll grab a pH strip. And check it. And we're right at 2. And we'll put our hide in. So your hide, when it's soaking in the pickle, it can float. You don't want the skin side up. So when you're mixing it around, make sure that the hair is floating at the top and there's no bare skin sitting exposed to the air, because it will slowly dry out. Bacteria will get to it and you'll have the hair slippage. So after about 2 hours, we'll come back, stir it around again, check our pH, make sure that it hasn't changed. Depending on your water, if you're on well water or some city water, you're going to have some problems with pH. Here I usually don't have to add any more acid, but make sure you check it for this first 24 hours to make sure that it hasn't. Usually after 24 hours it'll stabilize. Usually you'll see it in the first couple hours, so that's why we'll come back after 2, mix it around, check our pH, and add more acid if you need to or not. On the first 24 hours, you want to push it around 4 or 5 times. The more you do it, the better. And this hide will need to sit in here for at least 3 days. After 3 days, we'll be able to pull it out and do some work on it. You can let it sit in here for longer. I've let them sit up here for 2 weeks. As long as it maintains that pH of 2, this thing, the hide can stay in here forever. But 3 days minimum. And we'll just slosh that around. You want to make sure that you get all the skin exposed to the acid, and that will kill off a lot of the bacteria and stop it from being able to go ahead and start eating away at the hair follicles. So we'll check back in 2 hours, we'll check our pH, and we'll go from there. So it's been 2 hours. As I said, we'll come check our pH, check it on, still sitting at 2, and we'll mix this around. And like I said, you want the hair side up. If you have skin sitting like this, eventually this will dry out, and you're going to have problems with it. So when you're mixing it around, make sure when you're done mixing that it's the hair side up everywhere and there's no bits of skin sticking around. So we will do this a couple times today over the next 6-7 hours, and then once a day is good enough to mix it around, and we'll let it sit for 3 days before we can pull this out and work on it. We've come back, we're going to mix it again, and as you can see, it's really clean. There's not blood, there's not a bunch of debris in it. There's always going to be a few loose hairs floating around from your cuts or where you've shot the animal. That's fine, but if the main hide you can pull and the hair's tight, not slipping out, not moving. That's what we're looking for. There's not a bunch of blood in here. The actual pickle is clear, clean, and that will solve a lot of your problems with maintaining your pH. So we'll do this a few more times throughout this first day. And we'll come back to it in 3 days. So a couple of comments about the pickle, the safety acid. It's called safety acid because it's safe. If your kids get into this, or your pet, your dog, licks some of it, they're not going to die, it's not going to kill them. It's not a super strong acid. Same with the citric acid powder that most of the kits are going to come with. That is safe as well. Citric acid is used in food all over the place. It's the stuff that makes sour candies sour. So you're not going to have a problem on it. I do like keeping a lid on my tote. Just seems to keep everything nice and moist on top, and nothing, if there is a little piece of hide, helps it from drying out. If you enjoy doing this and you want to do a bunch of them over the years, a couple things you should look into getting is this one's Chemol 4. It's a soap. It will help rehydrate the skin, allow the pickle to penetrate better. It cleans the hair, any blood into the white spots of the animals. It'll help break that down. It's worth picking up some if you're going to do a bunch of these. Chemol 4. The next thing you want to look into, especially if you get into doing predators, is a deodorizer. This is a deodorizer wash. You add a little bit to this and it'll take the smell out of any of the animals, out of the fur, skunks, I don't know why I said skunks, bears, coyotes, stinky mule deer, deodorizing wash. And the reason why you want to use something like this or Chemol 4 is they don't affect the pH. If you go and grab a soap, a detergent, hand soap, whatever, that is really going to monkey with your pH in your pickle. You need to use taxidermy specific chemicals because they're not going to change the pH in your pickle. And that is your biggest thing with the pickle, is maintaining that pH. You don't need them at all. You're still going to end up with a very similar product. They're just nice to haves if you're going to do a whole bunch of them. You're going to end up with just a little bit better product, cleaner, if you have any issues with a bunch of blood or whatever else. You can also use the Chemol 4 in your rehydration cleaning bath to help get rid of if it's really blood stained at all. But like I said, you don't need it. Blood naturally breaks down in cold, clean water, so it's going to clean itself. The pickle helps with that as well. Just a nice to have if you're going to do a whole bunch of these. Because I do taxidermy work and tan a bunch of capes every year, I have all the chemicals for those. We'll check back in 3 days, as I said a few times before, and show you the next step in this process. It's the morning of day 4. This has been sitting in here for a solid 3 days. As I said, you can leave it for longer. Just check your pH, make sure you're in that 2.5 range. I'm going to get to this thing minimum 3 days. You want this thing soaking in here before you work on it. You do kind of have a time period here to work on it. Once you pull it out, I wouldn't let it go for more than 6 hours before getting it back into the pickle. You do run the risk of bacteria forming and causing hair slippage. So when you're going to work on it, make sure that you're going to work on it within that kind of 6 hour period and get it back into the pickle. It's not a problem if you pull it out, drain it, and something comes up, just throw it back in the pickle and you can work on it at a later date. Same thing is if you're working on it, a couple hours go by, you get tired, you don't want to do it anymore, throw it back in the pickle, and at a later date you can pull it out, drain it, and work on it again. So we got 2 options to drain the hide. For most of us, just hang dry, let it drip dry for an hour. Then you can roll it up in a towel, just get that excess moisture off of it, and it just makes it nicer to work on, that you don't have a bunch of pickle going everywhere. The other option is, if your wife allows, throw it into your washing machine, throw it on spin cycle, spin it dry, and you can work on it right away. That works really good, but for most of us, our wives aren't going to allow us to do that. So I'm going to hang this thing up for an hour, and then I'll show you the process of cleaning this hide up and getting it ready for the next stage. So the hide sat for an hour, drip drying. It's nice, not a bunch of pickle in it, so I can work on it now. The next thing we want to do is to get rid of any of the flesh, meat, fat that's on the hide. When I started out, I just used a fillet knife. I still use this one a lot of times. Your other option is to use a fleshing knife and scrape off everything. This works really well. I have a fleshing beam. When I started out, I just sat in a chair, had the hide over my knee, and just used this fillet knife and slowly went over the hide to get rid of everything. As I said, I still use this a lot of times. The one thing you need to be careful when using a knife is that you don't cut a bunch of holes in your hide. It's really easy to do. So you want to go on a really flat angle and just slowly get rid of that flesh, that meat. The better job you do in the field cleaning this hide when you're skinning it out, the easier this job is going to be. If you plan on keeping the hide, take your time in the field. It doesn't take much more time than when you normally skin out a hide, but the less meat, fat, flesh you leave on this hide, the easier it is to do now, and the better product you're going to get. So I'll just zoom in here, show you what I'm doing, and we'll go over this whole hide here. As I said, you don't need to do this in one shot. If you spend an hour on this and you get tired, throw it back in the pickle, and you can do it at a later date, finish it off. So we'll zoom in here, and I'll show you what I'm doing. So as we can see here, we got a bit of flesh, a little bit of meat on it. Using the fillet knife, we just want to go over and remove it. You are going to see a little bit of different colors in the hide at this point, just from when you skinned it out. Some of it might be a little blood stained. That will come out later. But we just want to go over and remove everything. You don't need a fleshing beam to do this. You can do it over your knee, but a fleshing beam is easier to work on. You can make your own fleshing beam. And that's all we need here, right? We're just down to the skin. So we'll do this over the whole hide. And just take your time so you don't cut any holes through it. If you do end up with a fleshing knife, I'll show you how that goes. Obviously a little quicker. I'll bring this up and just peel that meat and flesh, fat off. And using the fleshing knife peels off nice and easy, a lot easier than a fillet knife. But it's kind of a specialty tool unless you're going to be doing a lot of these. You can just stick with a fillet knife or another really sharp knife. Well, here we go, that's it. That probably took 10 to 15 minutes at the most. I'll have to check back on the video how long that actually took. When you skin out your animal really well in the field, it doesn't take long to do this step, even with a fillet knife. It does take a little longer than using a fleshing beam with a fleshing knife, but if you take your time, do it properly, you end up with a great product. This thing has to go back into the pickle for a minimum of 24 hours. That allows the pickle to penetrate those areas that were covered up with fat and meat and tissue to remove all the non-tannable proteins out of this hide. You can leave this hide in the pickle for as long as you want. I just watched a video where a taxidermist had a hide in a pickle for 7 years before he pulled it out and tanned it. So the pickle is a safe place for this. So if you're not prepared to work on it anymore, or if you get tired while you're cleaning it up, put it back in the pickle, maintain that 2 to 2.5 pH, and this thing will be safe. You don't need to remix a new pickle for this. Going into the original pickle will be fine. Make sure that you clean up your tools really well. Because of the high salt content of the pickle, your stuff's going to rust really fast. So after you get this in, make sure you wash everything off really well, clean it up so you don't get a bunch of rust and make a mess everywhere. So back into the pickle for 24 hours and we'll move on to the next step of turning this into a nice back skin, and it's going to turn out really well. Just a beautiful hide and a great way to make use of the animals that you harvest out in the field. So on to the next step. It's been 24 hours and we're on to the next stage of the process. You can wait to do this until you have a few hours to get the tan on and get into this next step. But minimum 24 hours until we go on to this step. And the next step here is neutralizing the hide. We need now to bring the pH up of the hide into the 3.5, 4 range. So the tan will actually stick and penetrate what is going to become the leather. If it's too acidic, the tan won't adhere and you're going to end up with a really stiff, tough product, not what you're looking for. So this is a simple step. I've pulled the hide out. It's going to drip for an hour, and that's just to get most of the pickle out of it. So our neutralizing bath has an easier time adjusting and bringing that pH up. Once again, we're using salt. Now we're at 1/4 pound per gallon, and baking soda is what we're going to use to bring up our pH, and we're 2 ounces per weight per gallon. So I'm using 7 gallons of water again, so we'll do 14 ounces of our baking soda and 1.75 pounds of salt. And the salt is to avoid swelling in the leather. It's called acid swell, and the salt helps stop that from happening. If you don't add salt, the acid will blow apart the leather and it'll just disintegrate into nothing. So you really need that salt in there. So we'll mix this up. We're going to let the hide drain for about an hour, and then we'll dump it into our neutralizing bath here. And the neutralizing bath is an hour as well. And during this process, every 10 to 15 minutes, you want to stir this hide around to make sure that everything gets exposed to it. So we'll make this up here. And that's our amount of salt. And we'll get our baking soda here. If you're doing a moose, elk, caribou hide that's thicker, you can leave it in the neutralizing bath for a little longer. You could go an hour and a half. You're better off over neutralizing your hide than under. And we'll weigh this out. So there we go, we got 14 ounces of baking soda, and we're only going to add half of it now. And it's just an eyeball, it doesn't have to be exactly half. We don't want to shock the skin when we neutralize it right off the bat. If you do the full amount, the difference between the acidic 2.5 of the skin to the neutralizing bath can shock it and cause what's called a surface tan. And the neutralizing won't penetrate through the whole thickness of the hide. And when you go on to tan it with your tanning oil, it won't penetrate the whole way because the whole hide, thickness of the hide hasn't been neutralized evenly. So we're just going to do half now. We'll mix this up. When the hide's ready to go in, we'll put it in, stir it around every 10 to 15 minutes. At the half-hour mark, we'll add the rest of our baking soda, and once again, continually stir this. The more you stir it for this hour, the better off, and the less chance you have of not having it fully neutralized. So we have about a half an hour left of the hide dripping, and then we'll get it in here and we'll show you how the neutralizing bath goes. The hide's been soaking for half an hour here in the neutralizing bath. Time to add the rest of our baking soda. Add that, stir it around. And another half an hour in here, and we'll be ready to go on to the next stage. Our hide's been soaking in the neutralizing bath for an hour. Time to move on to the next step in this process. So we're going to dump this out, fill our container with cold water, just a handful of salt, put the hide back in just the clean water that's lightly salted, just to get rid of any of the neutralizing fluid off of the skin. Just swirl it around for a couple minutes, that's all we need. We're going to hang dry it again for an hour, let everything drip dry off of it. If you have access to the washing machine and you can spin dry it, you can spin dry it, lay it out, and we'll get on to the next step of putting the tan onto it. So clean cold water with a handful of salt, rinse it, and it's going to hang up for an hour. So the hide's been hanging for an hour, drip drying. It's still pretty wet. We want to dry it out, so I just use a couple old towels. We'll kind of fold things on it, and we'll just roll it up in the towels. Try to get as much moisture off the skin side as we can. Just speeds up the process of our tan getting into the leather as it dries. So I'm just going to let this sit for 15 minutes. We'll come back, we'll roll it out. Depending what it looks like, if it's still pretty wet, I might just let it air dry for a half an hour, 45 minutes. If it looks alright, then we can go ahead and start putting our tan on it and get into that stage of it. So 15 minutes and we'll come back and see how things look. It's been about 20 minutes here, wrapped up in the towels. I unfolded it. It looks nice. It's not pooling water anywhere. It's obviously still damp, but the excess moisture is off the skin now, so that's where you want it. If it is wet, just put it in the towels again for a little bit longer. You can also leave it out like this to air dry. Up to an hour is fine before you get your tan onto it. So this is ready to go now. My tanning oil is True Bond 1000B. The B is for back skin, which is this. There's different products you can use, as I said earlier in the video. So whatever you're using, follow their directions. Some of them have said to heat the oil up before you put it on. I've tried that. It doesn't make any difference than just putting it on at room temperature. Just you want to shake it up. And pour it on and spread it out. You don't have to go super thick with it. And just a nice light coating over the entire hide is all you need. It doesn't take a lot. You gotta make sure you get it over the whole hide. It's alright if you get it on the hair. That's not gonna hurt anything. So as the hide dries over the next couple days, every 12 hours or so, you're going to come back to it and some of the spots will start looking dark as it dries. And we'll come back every 12 hours, we stretch it out just with our hands, all directions, and you'll see the color change in it. I'll show that coming up here. So we're just kind of babysitting this over the next 4 or 5 days as this dries. The tanning oil will get drawn into the hide and become leather. Obviously it depends on the humidity in your house and the temperature of your house, how long this is going to take. You don't want it to happen really fast, so you don't want to put any heat on this or try to dry this out. Just let it dry out at room temperature. The hair now is set in this. You're not going to have any slippage. If you had slippage, it would have shown up in the pickle. So this is fine now. You're not going to have any issues with this. So just, like I said, a light coating. You don't need any pooling of the tanning oil on it. It doesn't take a lot. You just want to make sure that everything's been coated in that thin little layer of the tanning oil. So we'll let this air dry. And we'll, like I said, we'll come back to it every 12 hours. We'll stretch it out until it's completely dry. And then we'll go on to the very last step of making a soft back skin. It's been about 12 hours since we put the tan on the hide. Starting to dry out. The thinner areas are going to dry out a little faster. So what we want to do as this thing dries every 12 to 24 hours, you want to come and stretch it. And you can see how the color changes as you stretch it. Pull it in all directions, and you want to do this around the whole hide. And some of the spots will go really dark. And we're just going to pull on this thing everywhere. Let's find another spot here. So this area is pretty dark. And see how it goes to white. And as you do this, eventually it'll just stay white as it dries. Let's find another. This area is starting to like dry up. Make sure you guys can see it here. So we'll just tug on this hide all over. And as you can see, those dark areas will go away. This back leg's a little bit wet still. Let's see this area here. Still a little damp. Let's see if you can see that. So like I said, it will go dark. Let's try to get this centered here. And so just work on this hide as it dries. Every 12 to 24 hours, come down, tug on it every direction until it's dry. So it's day 6 here after getting the tan onto the deer hide here. Everything's dried now. I stretched it out once every 12 to 24 hours, all directions. It's fully dry now. So we're ready to go on to the last step here. It is a usable hide at this point. It's all tanned, fairly flexible, and you can use it this way if you're just going to throw it over a railing at your house, over the stairs or a balcony. You can fold it up and get it into that position. I like to finish it off, make this, the leather, clean it up, any of the dark spots, and we're going to soften it up even more. So we're just going to use a palm sander here, 80 to 60 pound grit, or not, 80 to 60 grit sandpaper, and we're going to sand this whole thing. You could use a belt sander. They are a little bit aggressive, so you'd have to be really careful, take your time, because you can burn through the leather and get into the hair follicles where the hair is going to fall out on the other side. So we'll start sanding this thing out and finish it off here. So this is our last step in making a backskin. So here's just a little example of what the sanding does. Really cleans it up, helps soften it as well because you're thinning out the leather, breaks it in. So we'll probably spend the next hour or so going over this. That took about a half an hour with the palm sander to go over this entire hide. I blew the dust off with my air compressor. You can also put it in your dryer on an air-only mode and tumble dry this to get all the leather dust out of it if you want. Beautiful hide, turned out nice. Really soft. Beautiful, nice leather, super supple. And not a lot of work. In under 2 weeks we got this project done. Not a lot of manual labor. It's a lot of waiting as the process and chemicals take effect, but a great way to use your
animals, get more use out of them. They might make really nice decorations. If you have a really nice one, it makes a good gift as well as a little throw rug. And you can do it with a bunch of different animals. So here's our whitetail that we did in this video. Nice, beautiful, early October hide here in British Columbia. We also got mountain goat here. Another chunk of mountain goat. A late season mule deer back skin. Another early season mule deer here. And it's all the same. If you do use your hides, let your kids play with them, have them out on the floor or whatever. The leather is going to go from a white to a little bit of a yellowish, and that's just the leather picking up dirt over time as it's being used around your house or whatever. So don't be worried about a little bit of a color change in the leather at all, but nice, soft. And we got a black bear here as well. I will warn you, with predators, black bears, cougars, wolf, coyotes, bobcats, because they are greasy, there is an added step into a degreasing stage. So don't expect to get the same type of product with a predator as you will with a deer or a goat or an elk or moose or whatever. There is an added step. If there's any interest in seeing what it is like to do a predator, leave a comment down below, and if there's enough interest, I'll go over how to tan like a black bear back skin as well. So some beautiful hides. As I said, nice way to use more of the animals that you're harvesting out in the field, and just a nice, soft hide to have, and just beautiful, nice leather. And so anyways, I hope you guys learned some things from this video. If you like this type of videos, deer reviews, fishing, hunting content, please subscribe. Hit the thumbs up, that really helps the videos out, get out to more people. And thanks for watching, and please leave some comments what you guys think of this process, and any questions you have, write them down, and I'll make sure to check the comment section and answer any of your questions when you're working on your own hides. So thanks for watching.